You know, in most occupations, someone has studied the physical and emotional effects of the job. That's particularly true for those who are involved in traumatic situations. Think police, firefighters, paramedics, nurses. And when you talk about trauma, you likely don't think about long-haul truckers. But why not? Truckers spend so many hours on the road across the country, and most have witnessed or even been involved in accidents, some with serious injury or even fatal results. And that's the subject of our next guest's research. Morgan Beaudry is embarking on a project for her master's thesis at Royal Roads University, and she wants to reach out to long-haul truckers, particularly those who've been involved in a fatal accident. Morgan joins us now in our Regina studio to tell us more about her research. Hi, Morgan.
Hi, Garth. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me in.
Let's begin with the why. Why do you want to survey and study long-haul truckers?
Well, Garth, we share the road with trucks every day and with the truckers behind the wheel every day. And recently, in particular, there's been a lot of talk about regulating trucking, but not so much about supporting the drivers themselves. You know, we need trucking. And in this country, the economy runs on 18 wheels. It's vital to our economy. And trucking isn't going away anytime soon. So in order to understand the needs of trucking industry, we need to understand truckers, and we need to get a better understanding of what their needs are, because their needs aren't going away either.
Now, you're looking specifically, I think, for truckers who have witnessed or been involved in a serious accident involving serious injury or death. Why is that?
Well, because their experience is something that we can learn from. Specifically, the criteria states that I'm looking to include people in the study who have been involved in a collision that resulted in a death or in a serious injury. Witnessing is its own kind of trauma called vicarious trauma, but it's not included in the study because it's different enough that it actually, frankly, deserves its own study. In this, we're looking at the direct involvement. And this could be a single vehicle collision, this could be a pedestrian-involved collision, or it could even involve a vehicle hitting the semi, as has happened in the past as well. So that's what the target criteria there is specifically.
Why do you think there's been so little done and very little information about the trauma faced by truckers?
You know, that is such a great question. There's so much, as you said in the intro, there's some great research on trauma in any number of other professions. And what this research does, and what our research does, is it informs policy, and that policy can lead to the development of programs or changing programs to make workplaces safer and work culture safer. And we need to know a lot more insight on truckers. There is some absolutely terrific research on truckers, but what it's missing is the voice of the truckers themselves. Not a lot of this research captures their point of view and their perspective on things. Popular culture has created a lot of stereotypes about trucking and the trucking industry, and particularly about truckers, though, that they're tough guys, that they're rebels, that they don't need anybody, that they don't have or share their feelings, that they're these isolated stoics out there that are separate and apart from us. They've been portrayed also in popular culture and in media as ignorant, as reckless, as serial killers, maniacs. And that's completely unfair to paint a whole group of people with this very, very sort of shallow perspective. And what these stereotypes and these representations also do is it doesn't help us see them as people, as individuals with particular needs or with any needs.
Given that, forgive the pun, but you're dealing with a moving target here, how do you plan to conduct your research?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Well, that was one of the sticking points early in the research is, well, how do we reach people who could be away from home 17 to 22 days out of every 30? Technology came to the rescue, and a really interesting research method called photo voice. Are you familiar with that?
No, maybe you could tell us about it.
Absolutely. So photo voice is a kind of creative research and survey tool. Instead of answering a question in a survey or choosing from multiple choice, I would ask a question and then you would respond with your idea of the answer in the form of a photograph and then a caption explaining how the photograph answers answers the question. It lets people capture aspects of their environment and of their experiences and to share them with others in a way that goes much far beyond language and the limitations of words. And another thing that photo voice can do, photography is interesting. It generates interest and it creates conversation. It's really accessible as well. And pictures teach and educate, and everyone has cell phones today. So this photo voice project is being done with the phones in our pockets right now. It uses the resources we have. We're a connected society and we have social. And we also have the internet. So the research website, which is called The Knights of the Road, is going to be our conversation space. And truckers, because they don't work regular hours, they're here, they're there, they're at different times of day. They don't have a set schedule, or not all of them will. They can log in and they can comment and contribute to the conversation on their time whenever, wherever they are.
We're just a year or just a little over a year past the Humboldt Broncos bus crash. Is that what tweaked your interest in this topic? Actually,
no. I can't. Well, yes and no. About 1 year, almost to the day, before Broncos, there was an incident near Regina here involving a 63-year-old man who stepped in front of a semi-trailer and he died. And it was an absolutely grisly collision. In fact, the story that came out the following day fixed on the experience of the first responders and people driving by in their cars who saw this scene after the fact. The story did mention the driver, but the story's focus was on, well, we've got these first responders and what they're responding to is trauma, and trauma is a fairly typical response to something. And we have supports for these first responders. And for the driver, though, they said, well, he's doing fair and he's not sleeping. And that made me wonder, well, what kind of supports does he have? What's his experience like? Because we have these supports for these other workers that's been informed by years of research. What does he have? So I began working on my proposal, and then the Broncos tragedy happened. And because of that, a couple of things happened in the trucking community. Truckers actually began talking on social media about their own traumas and experiences. This is both good and bad. It's good in that, well, we know that they'll talk about it. It's bad in that this is a research population now that is so vulnerable, it would be inappropriate to have this conversation right now at this time. So we decided to just put pause, and we're going to let the Broncos play out. But in that time, there's been so many important conversations coming out of Broncos about mental health and about self-care and about monitoring. Because witnesses were affected, people survived, and they're still affected. So there's this entire spectrum of experience flowing from this negative event. And that informed and enriched my research and brings us right to today.
We're just about out of time, but Morgan, let us know how people who want to take part could become available or reach you.
Absolutely. The fastest way to find me is, of course, on Facebook, Morgan Beaudry. I've got the poster up on my site. It's also posted in the Canadian Trucking Group, and the Maritime Ride and Pride Group, and Atlantic Canada Truckers, and a few other groups on Facebook. My phone number is on the poster. People are welcome to text me, to DM me, to email me, to reach out in any way they like, and I'll be here to listen.
Okay. Morgan, thanks so much for coming in to talk about your work.
Thank you so much, Garth, for having me.
Morgan Beaudry lives and works in Regina. She's conducting a research project on long-haul truckers who've been involved in accidents involving serious injury or death. And as she mentioned, you can reach her on Facebook.